How often have you caught yourself stating that you have not succeeded, that you have failed yet again, that you simply aren't cut out for success? How frequently do we view our own actions with disappointment, feeling as though we are constantly tripping over ourselves, even as we exert our utmost effort to progress? And what's more, we accept these thoughts as truth. We genuinely believe we are inadequate, fundamentally flawed, or destined to make the same errors repeatedly. But is this perception accurate? Are we truly failing, or are we inadvertently undermining our own efforts? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychiatrist who ventured into the deepest recesses of the human psyche, provided a rather unsettling response. What we often perceive as failure is actually an unconscious performance, a covert and unseen manipulation by parts of ourselves lurking in the shadows, parts that, though they may seem hostile, are actually attempting to protect us. They protect us not out of nobility, but out of fear. They protect us like a fearful dog that snaps before it can be attacked. They keep us small, unseen, comfortable, because growth is painful, because change, visibility, space, and risk are all perceived by our psyche as threats. This is where the truly terrifying revelation lies. The forces that undermine us are not external. They are not our family, friends, employers, or society at large. They are facets of our own being. Internal voices shaped by a lifetime of experiences, some of which we may not even recall. Instances of rejection, embarrassment, criticism, and fear. Echoes from our childhood, our teenage years, silent traumas, and unmet expectations. These voices persist within us, acting as covert advisors that caution us, saying, "Don't proceed. This is risky. They will mock you. You will fail yet again." Unwittingly, we begin to obey these directives. We start creating delays, overlooking commitments, missing deadlines, entering self-destructive relationships, or abandoning our goals just as we are on the brink of achievement. But why do we engage in this self-betrayal, especially at pivotal moments? Jung posited that the human psyche is comprised of an internal committee, a mix of conscious and unconscious parts. Not all these components favor our advancement. Some prefer to maintain the status quo, as change threatens the identity we've crafted to navigate the world. For these parts, success might mean undue attention. Growth could lead to isolation. Excellence could incite envy. Thus, they hold us back, like invisible anchors working through self-sabotage. This isn't mere laziness or a lack of concentration. This is an internal conflict, a silent battle within us. It's a clash between our aspirations and the persona we've adopted to feel secure. A struggle between expanding our awareness and the regressive pull of our shadow. If we wish to overcome this battle, or rather, transform it into a process of reconciliation, we need to stop viewing these self-sabotaging behaviors as personal defects. We should see them as signals, warnings, symptoms of deeper issues within our psyche. Jung teaches us that the solution isn't to suppress these elements or pretend they don't exist. The solution lies in engaging with them, understanding their fears, and dialoguing with our internal saboteur as we would with a scared child who knows only chaos as a form of protection. And that's precisely what we'll delve into next. Who is this internal saboteur? How does it develop? How does it operate? And why, despite our best intentions, can it dismantle everything we've built? There's a part of us that never shows up in photographs. isn't mentioned in conversations, and often we can't even identify it ourselves. Carl Jung named this element the shadow, and it's where our internal saboteur resides. The shadow isn't just a literary figure of speech, it's real. It's an independent psychic entity that stores everything we've been conditioned to suppress, deny, or conceal. It harbors our fears, impulses, traumas, insecurities, painful recollections, forbidden desires, and feelings of inadequacy. Everything that doesn't align with the public persona we've created for ourselves is relegated to this shadow. From an early age, we learn what's acceptable and what should be concealed. Don't cry. That shows weakness. Don't complain. Be thankful. Don't be too self-assured. That's arrogance. Thus we adapt. We construct a socially acceptable self and unknowingly push vast portions of our psyche into the depths of the unconscious. But suppression doesn't eradicate these elements. Instead, it empowers them. They develop their own existence, and that's where the danger emerges. Because the shadow isn't merely a passive storage space. It acts. It observes. It learns the language of our fears and begins manipulating our lives from the background. When we're poised to make a decision that could elevate us to a new level, be it a healthier relationship, a career opportunity, or a significant life change, it's the shadow that whispers, "This isn't meant for you. You'll fail. You don't deserve this." And the most unsettling aspect is that it speaks using our own voice. Jung cautioned us that the shadow isn't malevolent, it's primitive. It operates based on survival. For the shadow, growth is a risk. Advancement means stepping into the unknown, facing criticism, challenging established norms. The shadow has learned that it's safer to remain small, unseen, compliant. That's why it triggers self-sabotaging behaviors whenever it senses we are venturing out of our comfort zone. Sometimes it immobilizes us with anxiety. Other times, it leads us to procrastinate chronically. There are moments when it stirs conflicts, terminates relationships, or destroys everything, simply to return us to a state where it feels in control. If we examine ourselves honestly, we'll notice the influence of the shadow everywhere. In the decisions we defer without reason, in the projects we abandon midway, in the chances we let slip away, in the destructive patterns we repeat, even while insisting that this time it'll be different. Each of these actions is a clear indication that the internal saboteur is at the helm. But here's the most crucial point. The shadow only dominates us when it remains unrecognized. This is what Jung meant by stating that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will govern our lives, and we will refer to it as fate. When we fail to acknowledge this force within us, we start to believe we are at the mercy of luck, misfortune, the world, or ourselves. But once we acknowledge the presence of the saboteur, we start to comprehend that it is actually a neglected part of us crying out for integration. However, merely recognizing this isn't sufficient. We need to understand what this part fears exactly. Why does it associate our success with pain, rejection, or abandonment? What experiences have shaped this belief? What unconscious narratives fuel the sabotage? And that's precisely what we will explore in the subsequent part. If this content resonates with you, click the subscribe button and join the channel. Thank you for your support. There's a harsh paradox within us. A segment of our psyche, while craving progress, is petrified of transformation. It desires our happiness, but deeply fears the potential costs. It yearns for our success, but believes that success entails exposure, judgment, solitude, or even desertion. And thus, often at the very moment we are about to step through a door that could elevate us, something holds us back. This regressive force, this unseen barrier, represents our unconscious attempt to protect ourselves against the risks associated with growth. According to Jung, this mechanism stems from deeply impactful emotional experiences that the psyche records as existential threats. We aren't dealing with logical, conscious memories here, but rather with emotional impressions, often established in childhood, that form enduring associations between change and suffering. Consider, for instance, a child who learned that standing out brought criticism. Whenever they voiced their ideas, they were disregarded. Whenever they displayed joy or self-assurance, someone would make them feel small. This child grows up with an unconscious rule: being authentic is risky. Revealing your true self invites rejection. It's better to avoid attention. And this rule continues to operate, even in adulthood, even when circumstances have drastically changed. The problem is that our unconscious doesn't work based on rational logic. It operates on emotional associations. If, at some point in the past, visibility meant pain, it will continue to shield us from that at all costs, even if that's precisely what we desire now. Thus, whenever we're about to expose ourselves, whether by starting a new project, entering a relationship, changing careers, or embracing our true identity, the unconscious sounds its alarms, and the shadow intervenes to sabotage the process. But not as an adversary, but as a guardian. A hurt guardian, indeed, but one that believes it's shielding us from the worst. Herein lies the paradox. The same part that destroys us also thinks it's saving us. Sabotage isn't an assault. It's a misguided protective effort. Our psyche has concluded that the pain of rejection is more severe than the pain of stagnation, that the fear of failure is more bearable than the fear of meeting others' expectations, that living a half-hearted life is less risky than living fully. Therefore, we remain trapped in cycles, dreaming grandly but moving in circles, initiating but never completing, desiring but continually finding invisible excuses to delay. And there's an even deeper aspect here. This sabotaging part remains unnamed. It's not illuminated by the light, but by making the darkness conscious. True transformation occurs when we stop hiding from ourselves, when we dare to confront the part we reject and inquire, "What do you want from me?" This marks the beginning of integration. It's not about eliminating the shadow, but acknowledging its presence, listening to its voice, understanding its logic. Only then can we reclaim the energy it has confined and channel it toward something constructive. One of the most potent techniques Jung suggested for this process is active imagination. Unlike traditional meditation, which aims to clear the mind, active imagination encourages us to delve into the chaos of the unconscious. The method involves entering a state of receptivity and allowing images, voices, characters, or symbols to emerge spontaneously, as in dreams, and then consciously engaging with them, not as a mere observer, but as a participant, as someone who dialogues with their own shadow. This symbolic conversation enables us to finally give shape to what haunts us. The shadow ceases to be a chaotic force and becomes an internal interlocutor. We can, for instance, imagine that we are face to face with the part of us that procrastinates, undermines relationships, explodes in anger, or cowers in fear. And by interacting with it, we discover that its motivation, more often than not, is legitimate. It aims to keep us safe. It still operates based on past parameters. It still perceives us as vulnerable, unprepared, scared. And it is in this moment of profound listening that a new relationship can begin to form. A relationship of integration, not of conflict. The integration of the shadow, as Jung understood, is a slow, deep, and frequently painful process. It requires the bravery to see in ourselves what we most despise in others. It demands the maturity to acknowledge that our greatest internal adversaries only exist because they have been neglected for too long. But above all, it calls for responsibility, because once we see, we can no longer pretend we didn't. Once we listen, we can no longer forcefully silence it. By integrating the shadow, we regain vitality. Many people report, following this process, a profound sense of relief, as if they had lifted an invisible burden. Others discover talents, desires, and potentials that were suppressed by repression. And most importantly, the cycle of self-sabotage begins to unravel, because now the part that once pulled us back starts to walk alongside us. But the work doesn't end there. After integrating the shadow, a new question arises. What should we do with all this energy that was previously used to sabotage us? How can we transform fear into fuel, pain into learning, insecurity into creative impulse? This is what we will explore in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious offers you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Few people realize this, but within every destructive emotion lies an immense amount of vital energy. Anger, fear, insecurity, jealousy, shame. All these feelings we avoid and often attribute to our weakness are not, in essence, negative. They are merely raw. They are unrefined energy, pulsing within us, waiting for direction. And once we stop repressing this energy and begin to understand it, we can redirect it with an almost explosive power. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Where there is fear, there is power." You see, everything that sabotages us has behind it a distorted positive intention. Procrastination, for example, may just be a symptom of an unconscious fear of failure, or of succeeding and not being able to meet expectations. Perfectionism can be an attempt to protect oneself from criticism. Chronic indecision, an unconscious way to avoid rejection. And all these internal strategies, despite limiting us, have something in common. They try to protect us from a pain we have felt before. And that is why, if we can transform this energy into awareness, it can become a creative force. But how is this possible in practice? The answer lies in integration. When we do the work of looking at the shadow, listening to its motives, and understanding its roots, something extraordinary happens. The energy that was once used to sabotage us reorganizes. We begin to recognize the emotional patterns that paralyzed us, no longer as external obstacles or internal failures, but as psychic scripts that can be rewritten. And this act of rewriting, of redirecting, is the turning point. For example, anger, when understood, can transform into assertiveness. Fear can become intelligent caution. Shame can turn into sensitivity. Insecurity can evolve into genuine humility. What was once experienced as weakness becomes wisdom. Because contrary to what we have been taught, It is not by ignoring our emotions that we become strong. It is by using them with awareness. And it is at this moment that we begin to realize something essential. The internal saboteur was not our enemy. It was a messenger. It was crying out for attention. And the more we ignored it, the more it sabotaged. But now that we have listened, that we understand, that we have created an internal space for this part to manifest with dignity, it can reorganize. It can, for the first time, work in our favor. Think about this. What if that part that always destroyed your opportunities is exactly the part with the greatest capacity to build them? What if the fear that paralyzes you is the same that, when redirected, can make you move forward with a courage you have never experienced? What if the emotional exhaustion you have felt for years is just the result of fighting against yourself, and that now, with the forces aligned, this exhaustion can give way to a new kind of vitality? Jung saw this as the essence of the individuation process, the moment we stop being fragments fighting against each other and start operating as an integrated whole. It is in this state that true inner freedom emerges, because finally, we are no longer divided. There is no longer one part trying to move forward and another pulling back. We are united, whole, complete, and that changes everything. However, there is an important detail. To reach this point, we must learn to recognize when we are sabotaging ourselves while we are sabotaging ourselves. Awareness is the antidote, and more than that, we need to develop the ability to perceive the subtle patterns of the mind in our daily lives, to understand how these impulses arise, how they distract us, how they convince us to give up on ourselves. Understanding that what we often call failure is actually a deeply rooted act of self-sabotage, an unconscious mechanism orchestrated by parts of ourselves that have been forgotten, wounded, or rejected. We are not failing due to a lack of ability. We are stuck because there are internal voices, often older than we can remember, telling us that it is safer not to change. Jung teaches us that the true obstacle is not outside. It is not the world, the system, the other. It is the silent war we wage within ourselves, the internal division between who we want to be and what we have learned we should be, the battle between our potential and the traumas that created our defenses. But the biggest mistake we can make is to keep fighting against these parts, to keep trying to silence the shadow, repress the fear, ignore the saboteur. Because the truth is that these parts will not disappear. They are part of our psychic structure. They are pieces of our history, fragments that carry not only pain, but also power. The power to protect, to alert, to transform. The key is not to defeat the saboteur. The key is to listen to it, to recognize it, to integrate it. When we do this, we stop sabotaging ourselves. We begin to orient ourselves, to walk with all our parts together, including those that previously hindered us. This is true psychological maturity, stepping out of the childish illusion that we can be only light and accepting that the shadow is an essential part of our wholeness. What separates those who realize their potential from those who remain stuck in the same place is not talent or luck. It is the ability to recognize, with humility and courage, when we are being dominated by unconscious parts, and the willingness to dive into this internal territory to reclaim the autonomy we gave away without realizing it. If you have made it this far, know this is already a sign that you are ready for this work, ready to stop repeating cycles, ready to transform the fears that paralyze you into allies that propel you forward. Now, I want to invite you. Write in the comments a situation where you realized you were self-sabotaging. It can be something recent, something old. The simple act of recognition is already part of the integration process. When we verbalize, we begin to transform and continue this journey. The next video is the natural continuation of this process. It is also important. I'll see you there.